Hello? Is this thing on? If you can hear me, comment in the chat. I'm gonna go in portrait mode. Oh, orientation is locked. Okay. Can you guys hear me? Hello? Anybody out there? Hello? If you are there, drop a comment in the chat. Hello? Ah, excellent. Glad you're here. Welcome, welcome. I'm gonna drop my chair down a little bit so that you can see me. Very, very glad that you are here. Welcome to this Young Heretics live stream Q&A. Everybody is welcome to watch and check this out. Of course, please tell your friends, tweet the link, all that stuff. But only locals VIPs can ask questions. I've got a bunch of questions here from locals VIPs, so thank you guys. If you're not on locals, if you're watching this, if you're not on locals, please come join us. It's an amazing community. Big tech is getting worse and worse every day. They just they suspended Dave Rubin for tweeting perfectly true things about coronavirus and the current craziness about lockdowns and masks and everything. And so locals is the solution to this. This is the off-ramp where people who love this show, the Young Heretics, who love the great works of the West, can come together and talk more deeply about the stuff that we discuss on the show. We talk about how to incorporate the great principles and virtues of the West into our lives. And there's extra stuff too, like I write articles, there's whiskey recommendations, there's workout tips, all sorts of things. So if you're watching this and you're not a VIP, I do encourage you to come join, especially so that you can ask questions and stuff like this. It's youngheretics.com/locals. And you can become an annual member or a monthly member. Either one is great. Annual member, I think, is especially good because it costs less per month. However you do it, there's a ton of great benefits. So please do come join. All right, I have a bunch of questions here. VIPs, if you are on locals right now and you have other questions that you want to ask, you can keep posting them as I'm doing this. As always, I may not get to every question, probably won't get to every question, and so if your question isn't answered, there will be other opportunities to re-ask it again. But I'm gonna just get started, get through as many of these as I can while I have you here. So here's the first one, it's from Ian. Ian says, Spencer Klavan, what in your opinion is the value of physical writing in the creative process? It occurs to me that when I hear people talking about their ideas, it's always either verbal, like on podcast or lecture, or it's in print. Do you ever sit down and write out your thoughts as part of the exercise of creativity, or is that just a fanciful hobby? Has the digital age of options of typing or voice recording replaced the pen and paper? No, I do write physically. In fact, if I turn the camera, you can see, and it's part of the set of the show, it's also real life. You can see all my journals. I have stacks of them down there from grad school and other times in my life. And one of the interesting things I've noticed, actually, is that different times in my life are times of more journaling or less journaling, more or less physical writing. And I think there are a couple reasons for that. One of the things I find is that I am often drawn to write on paper when there's something in my head that I'm working out, but I don't know what it is. It's like subconscious, something that's bothering me, an idea that hasn't yet fully quite taken shape, and so I do a lot of journaling by hand, writing it out. It slows you down, and it makes you, I think, really kind of engage with each word because it's harder to just endlessly rewrite and recreate. And so in some ways, maybe the reason why I write on paper when I'm working something out is because it makes me read what I'm writing and it makes me think very carefully about each thing. You can really bang out a lot of words on a typewriter, on a keyboard, but you can't when you're writing, and I think it's really helpful. There's also other stuff, pencil and paper is a very powerful technology in some ways. You can write anywhere, and they've done some notepad apps and things that kind of simulate this, but you really can't get it without just actually sitting down on a yellow legal pad or in a journal. And I love the physical holding of a book too. So all of those things, I do still write by hand a fair bit, especially in the preparation stage, in the note-taking stage, in the journaling stage, creative writing, all that stuff. Look, every technology comes with benefits and costs. And sometimes, because we're such optimists, enlightenment optimists, we think, oh, this technology has no downsides, but everything takes something away. And that goes way back to, like, Plato writes in, I think it's the Phaedrus, he has this whole conversation where it's like, well, now that people are writing things down, they won't memorize things and they won't have conversations, right? So it'll make our memories worse, and we won't be able to ask questions because books just sit there like statues. They don't grow like trees or people. And so that tells you something. It tells you that every new technology comes with worries, and those worries might be valid. It might be real. The world does change with new tools, and lots of philosophers have talked about this. Hegel and different scholars. James Poulos, my colleague, writes about it a lot at Claremont. And so one of the things that digital technology has done is it has made words and written things less sort of fixed, less permanent. And that means you can pump out a lot more, but that's not always best for the craft of writing. One thing I tell young writers is that they should actually read a whole lot, and they should read good writers and let the voice of good writers get into their heads. But they only write a little bit a day, because you really have to perfect each sentence as you go. And writing with pen and paper can be really good for that too. Thanks for that question, Ian. Hope that helps to answer it. I'm gonna now pull up this list of, I have this other list of questions on a video that I made. Helen's actually asking a related question. Do you write notes in your books, even in pencil? Yeah, I used to be very religious about the way that my books, my physical books were shaped. And now, especially, I think of these physical objects as so precious. I have boxes of them next to me that I still haven't unpacked. And when we move into this new house that we've just, we're under contract on now, I have a lot of plans to make, big wall-to-wall bookshelves. And I've written about this actually in City Journal. I had a piece called Coming Home, and it's about the bookshelves in my parents' house and how those shaped me growing up. So I do have a real reverence for the object. But I changed my mind, and I talked about this on one episode of the show. I can't remember which, but one of the mailbags I addressed. Not by my father. I was reading a book that my father had owned before me. It was a book called After Virtue by Alistair MacIntyre, really wonderful treatment of Aristotelian virtue ethics for the modern age. I do recommend it if you haven't read it, and we'll probably talk more about it on the show. But the point of this story is just that I found my father's notes as I was reading that book. And one of the things he had written in the margins over and over again was JC, 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 JC question mark, JC, JC. And I realized that this was a book that came from the time before he had converted to Christianity. But he was seeing how all of this pagan ethics, all of this ancient Greek Aristotelian stuff pointed toward Jesus. And so he was writing JC, Jesus Christ. This is the footsteps of Jesus here and here and here. And it was part of his conversion. And that's a really precious object to me. Yes, JC, Jesus Christ, exactly. I see somebody commenting on this. And it's incredibly precious to me to have that record of his conversion. And what I realized is that is part now of the book, and the book becomes even more irreplaceable, even more distinctive when it has the record of your engagement in it. And so I now do write in books when I'm really, really wrestling with them, especially if I'm about to review them. I'll underline things and write in them. And I don't think of that anymore as compromising the importance of the object. I think of it as increasing the value of the object, especially in this world, as we were just saying, where everything can vanish into thin air, these digital, bits and bytes. And as we were talking about earlier at the beginning, the big tech can just snap their fingers and that's gone, and there's no physical hard copy location of it. It's going to become more and more important, I think, as the digital age. We think that the digital age is going to make physical space less important, right? That would transcend and we'll just upload our consciousness to the cloud or whatever. I think that at all. I think that actually we're going to become more and more invested in land and in physical stuff and in our bodies, because these are the things that make us human. And so, yeah, now I write in books all the time because I think it is a part of how the book takes shape as an object in your life. Okay, thank you, Helen, for that question. Cade, what do you think of dating people who disagree on almost all things, God, politics, and moral truths? Well, I think this is a really wonderful question, and I'm going to tell you my own experience with it. Paul, the Apostle Paul, writes, "Do not be unequally yoked." And what he means by that is that Christians shouldn't date or marry non-Christians. And I used to think, before I became as devoted to Scripture as I now am, I used to be like, well, I'm a Christian, but I'm not sure that that really means that I need to only date other Christians. And I just thought that was kind of weird advice. And Paul says, if you're already married to somebody who's not a Christian, then don't divorce that person. You should stay with that person, and hopefully maybe you can convert. Who knows? Maybe God's put you with that person so that you can convert him or her. But don't enter into a relationship, says Paul, unless you share a faith. And I never really understood the logic of that. I wasn't committed to it. And so I started dating in grad school, really, is when I started dating, and I dated a few people who were atheists, and there was a lot of intellectual connection there. There was a lot of emotional, spiritual, physical connection. Noticed something, and that was that at this point I was going deeper and deeper into my faith, and in fact I was considering becoming a priest in the Church of England. I think some of you know that that's a path that I went down for a while, and so I would serve in different services, and that was a big part of my day. I would go to church and offer communion or take communion, and I would come home. I remember very vividly one person specifically who was an atheist. Everything else was great. Everything else worked perfect. And I would tell this person, I am, the typical thing when you're dating somebody, how was your day? I did this and this and this. What did you do? And I would say, well, I went to church, I did this thing, and I gave the Eucharist, or I took the Eucharist, or I read this passage, or whatever. And he was very, very open-minded about that and nice, and he would say, oh, okay, well, that's interesting. But just because of what he believed, he could only look at that as a kind of primitive superstition that I had, right? As like a quaint thing that I did. And for me, more and more, it was the very core of my life, and it had richness and meaning and reality to it. And you can only understand, I see a comment about the 2A train. I do have a gun here in this house, so don't worry about that. But no, you can only understand. You can only understand religion and true religious experience if you believe that there's something real on the other side. And so what is it to date somebody or to hopefully marry somebody? It's to share your life with them. And so on some level, you need to be on this page about what that life is. And if faith is the core of your life, as I believe it should be, if it's what you orient everything else around, it's going to be really, really hard. It's going to increase the difficulty, at least unnecessarily, to enter into a relationship with somebody who doesn't think that that core of your life is real. And that's hard truth, and it's, maybe you have to find that out for yourself, I don't know. The rest of the stuff I think that you can work around, maybe not moral truth. Moral truth is going to be hard to deal with when you're raising kids, right? And some moral truths are less central than others, right? The sanctity of life, for example, is pretty central. It'd be hard, I think, to respect or love somebody romantically who didn't agree with you that all lives are sacred from the moment of conception, or who had different views with you on that. But politics. My parents have different politics, strongly different politics, and it was a great boon gift to me. I grew up. I grew up. Helen, I agree. Praying with a partner is transformative, so special. And now that I'm with somebody who does believe, I remember on our second date we prayed together, and it changed everything. It was the first time I'd ever prayed with anybody else. But that's just to say, you have to know. Here's a way to put all the things that I'm saying. You have to know what's important. You have to know what really is central. We talk and we wring our hands about politics a lot. But actually, politics in the terms of like what you voted, what's going on here and there, that's not central, and that shouldn't get in the way if you're being in love with somebody. What is central, core underlying beliefs and issues that politics can sometimes reflect. And so my parents disagreed about all sorts of things, and I saw them argue at the breakfast table every morning all the time about stuff, and it was really good for me. I learned a lot about what I believed and how to express myself. But they were on those core things about morality and indeed about the existence of God, they were like this. They were so in sync, and that was a model for me too. And so you do have to share those things, I think, with your partner. I think it's really hard to be unequally yoked with somebody on those core issues. All right, well, I'm going to move on to another question, but I'm going to remind you all, since new people I see have joined, it's great to have you here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I love these questions are so smart. I love these questions. And I'm so grateful to you for them. The only people who can ask questions, anybody can watch, anybody's welcome to watch, but the only people who can ask questions are Young Heretics VIPs on Locals. And so if you want to become a VIP, I would love to have you. It's just such a special community where we talk about the great truths of the West and how to incorporate them into our lives. I share a lot more of this kind of stuff on there than I do on the show. The show I'm talking about a specific work or a specific text, but here we get to know each other more personally and get to know the West more deeply, and you get to ask questions like this. So please do head over to youngheretics.com/locals and join us to become a VIP. You can become an annual or a monthly member. I think annual is really the way to go because it's $56 for the whole year. I think is what it is. And that's cheaper than paying for the monthly. But either way, please do. I think I may have lost you for a second there, but I think I'm back. Can you see me? Can somebody drop a comment if you can hear me? I may have lost you guys for a bit, but can anybody hear me? Just drop a comment in the chat if you can hear me. Hello? Anybody there? I want to make sure I have you guys here with me. Okay, good. Excellent. I'm seeing comments now. Okay. Hey, good. I think somebody called me, and I think that caused the problem. Okay, like I said, come join us on Locals, youngheretics.com/locals. This is from Christine. My university announced today that they are mandating the vaccine for students. I assume that's the COVID-19 vaccine. Clean your cuticles, says somebody. Thanks, that's helpful. That's why I come onto these, is to be told to clean my cuticles. My university announced today they are mandating the COVID vaccine for students, faculty, and staff. Religious medical exemptions are available, and I'll try, but I don't think they're likely to go through. I'm a rising third-year doctoral student, and I can't tell if dropping out and refusing the vaccine is the hill I should die on or not. Now that push has come to shove, I'm terrified and don't know what to do. Either I lose 2 years of hard work through the lockdowns, which was not easy, and a successful journey to candidacy, and have to start over somewhere else with the stigma of dropping out on my back, or I compromise my integrity and give in to tyrannical nonsense over this issue. My question is not so much what I do, but rather how do I discern what to do in a situation where my integrity is put to the test and the risks are high. Well, Christina, I'm sorry about this. This is awful. I mean, this is really evil what they're doing. And you have my sympathy, and I think that we need to stress that, because this stuff, it's easy to get up in arms and yell about it over politics, but really this is a terrible, as you say, it's tyranny. This is this vaccine. I personally believe that the vaccine is safe, and I think it's actually pretty amazing that they made it. That Trump made it. No, but I think it's pretty amazing, this vaccine, and I think that that's part of what makes the CDC stuff so insane, that they're saying it doesn't work now. And so I don't think that you should be afraid about what will happen when you take the vaccine, but I think that what you're really talking about is how to discern when a hill is worth dying on, like you say. And ultimately only prayer can answer this question, but I think there are a few guidelines, right? Always think about your telos. What is your goal? What are you trying to do? And that goes also for your program in general, right? If you're in this doctoral program, you are trying essentially to gain a credential, which you are going to use for something in the world, right? I presume. For me, my doctorate has been enormously helpful, powerful, not just in terms of the credential that it gives me, but because of everything that I learned and the studies that I was able to do and the people that I was able to study with. I would not have given that up because of a principled stance against the vaccine. I don't think that you are going to be able to undo this policy. I think that you can fight like hell and make your voice known and everything, but there are some things that are out of our control. And so, let me give another example, right? I am now so committed, so against mask mandates, that and so fed up with tyranny and so convinced that this is just going to go on and on and on, that I am refusing to do business with businesses that won't let me in without a mask. If they ask for a mask but they let me go in without one, that's fine. But if they won't let me come in without wearing a mask, I'm going to let them know that that's the last they'll ever see me in the store. And I would encourage anybody who thinks the same way to do this too. I think we should make this kind of response into a movement. And the reason for that is because I think you can make that change in your local community. I believe that you have that power and that a lot of people are currently making choices. It's not as done a deal as people tell us it is. And if we band together and if we do something concrete with our actions and with our wallets, then we can actually influence how culturally we respond to this next wave of authoritarianism. So you need to know what you can and can't change, and then you need to know what's worth the sacrifice to you, and what are you sacrificing, right? It's a big sacrifice to throw away those years of work. And if I were you, you need to go and pray about this. You need to ask God. But if I were you, I would not die on this hill. I would not give up everything that you've done just because you're trying to make a statement. Because I don't think that statement ultimately is going to be very effective. And that's a bitter pill to swallow because it's hard to say that we can't change some things, but we can't. And I think the discernment is what can I change and what am I willing to give up to change and what are my goals, right? Those are the questions for you to ask yourself. And I would hate to see you lose out because of this, because of these monsters. See, the other thing is, like, if you give up that work, right? If you let them sort of make you give up your PhD, you're kind of letting them win. Because again, right, you're not going to actually do them damage. Unlike where you say to a store, right, you're gonna lose my business, and you can actually affect change that way and make real protest. You're not going to hurt them by giving up your PhD. You're going to hurt yourself, and that's I would hate to see that. I would hate to see you do that. But let me know what you decide, because it's your choice, and it's between you and God. Okay. This is nbobber14. It says, in a recent podcast I listened to, you mentioned that to begin your journey or find what you should do, you should pray to God for the answer. Yes, that's what I was just talking about. I'm interested in this mainly because I'm a recent college grad who doesn't know what to do with my life, and I was raised Catholic, agnostic in college, and now I'm interested in returning to my relationship with God, but I don't know where to start. I think a lot of people out there are in this position in some way or another, like you've had some kind of faith in your history or your past, but maybe you wandered away from it. A lot of guys do this in college. Most men, I think, even if they were raised with the right thing, they need to have an experience of rejecting that thing or letting it go so that they can find their own way and know their own way. And that's not evil or wrong. We can't shame people. Oh, somebody says he can't hear. Can anybody else? Is anybody else having this problem? Can the rest of you hear me? Hello? Okay, just checking. Just wanted to make sure, because this is an important question that nbobber14 is asking. I believe that I've seen a lot of my friends go through this, men especially, but everybody who was raised in a faith, even if that's the true faith, they need to go through a period of testing and trial, and we shouldn't judge them for that, right? This is a lot of people say, oh, you're giving up the true faith. In many cases, God is leading them through a period of doubt so that they can have a deeper, firmer grasp on their faith. And so, Bobber, I think that's maybe part of what you've just been through. God may have led you through a time of agnosticism, so that when you come back to Him, you will know why more deeply, and it won't just be something that came to you from your parents, but you'll have ownership over it. I think that's possible. And now you have questions, right, about how to reignite that flame, how to get back into prayer. And there's two questions. One, how do you recommend I return to God? Are there any pieces of literature you'd recommend beyond the obvious Bible to help me rekindle this relationship, like anything by St. Thomas Aquinas? And two, considering I haven't prayed to God in a while, how do I pray to Him to ask for guidance? Okay, well, I think Aquinas would be a good one. I mean, Aquinas is tricky because his big work is basically an encyclopedia. And so I go to the Summa, to the Aquinas Encyclopedia, when I want to sort of, how to put it, when I want to answer a specific question, right? Like how many angels are there, or whatever, I would suggest if you're gonna do a kind of an older work, I would suggest Augustine. If you haven't read Saint Augustine's Confessions, he describes in many ways something very similar to the kind of journey you are describing: wandering away from the church, coming back to it, re-engaging with God after that. I see somebody suggesting Mere Christianity, C.S. Lewis. That was definitely going to be one as well. Yeah. But try Augustine's Confessions and try C.S. Lewis' Mere Christianity. Those are both, I think, really personal, really intimate ways of rediscovering the reasons to believe in God and how to connect with God. I also think that the Screwtape Letters, which we did a couple episodes on, are really good ones, because that's a lot about prayer. There's a lot in there about prayer. And then this other one, right? How do I pray to God to ask for guidance? Well, I really think, and we do a lot of prayer on locals together, as you know, and I really think that we have this hang up in our head, like we have to know what to say, or we have to know what we think theologically. A lot of times in prayer, I get caught up in getting just the right theology. And I'm not actually so sure that that's what prayer is for. I think reading is for theology. I'm very much in favor of theology, and I think it can guide the way that you engage with God. But you may wish to pray the sinner's prayer. You may wish to ask Jesus into your heart again. You may wish to pray the Lord's Prayer. Those are obviously forms that Christians have found meaning in for a long time, and that can get you started, right? You can sort of meditate on each of those lines, right? Well, what does it mean to ask for my daily bread? What would it be like if I specifically asked for my daily bread, right? That's something I do sometimes. Is like, okay, here's the Lord's Prayer. Here's the first line: Our Father, who art in heaven. Do I believe that? Do I believe that our Father is in heaven, that he's our Father, right? Close, careful study of traditional prayers can be a helpful way to kind of like springboard you into talking to God. And then, maybe by contrast, maybe instead, if you've had a Catholic upbringing and you feel like traditional prayer can get you stuck in these kind of ruts, maybe you just need to say to God exactly what you just said to me, right? You could talk to God about all the things that you just talked to me about, and maybe search for answers from Him the way you've come searching for answers from me. But those are some habits, and I saw somebody make a really wonderful suggestion, and that is thank you. Just say thank you. I say thank you every night before I go to bed, and that's the very first thing I did when I started to really pray. And I should say that I started to really pray in college, because there was a period in my life in college where I thought I had everything figured out, and then I lost all of my motivation, all of my willpower. And I'm somebody who defines himself by his willpower, by his effort, and by the stuff that I do, and by my discipline, my work ethic. And I lost all of that, and I needed God's help even to get out of bed and brush my teeth. And so I started to develop this gradual prayer life where I was asking Him, like, please just help me get out of bed. And I prayed about every little thing, and I let Him into every little part of my life because I needed Him. And I believe very strongly that He let me need Him in that moment. He said to me, like, you think that you've got all of this drive, all of this discipline, all of this energy? All of that comes from me. None of that is yours, right? And so He took it away from me so that I would know that, right? And He said, you have to ask me for every, I will give all of it to you. He gave it all back to me and more, and then some. I am more disciplined, more strong, more skillful, more talented now than I was then in college before. But He needed me to know that every bit of that came from Him. And so I prayed every day for like each little thing, and at the end of every day I said thank you for all those things. And that was it. And so that's a really powerful way to get going. And Bobber, I hope you were richly blessed in your return to the faith. And I'm really grateful that you brought that question to me. I hope you also bring that question to God. Okay, we're really, gosh, the time flies, and there's so many questions that I want to get to, but let's do another one of these again really soon, I think. Gosh, there are so many that I want to answer, but I'm going to pick one more. Oh, okay. I noticed that you have studied the classics. This is from Berean Life. I noticed you have studied the classics at both American and English universities. What differences and similarities did you notice between the attitudes or teaching styles of these two nations to the classics? Thanks. Well, you could do a whole podcast on this. I mean, the American university system versus the British university system. I was so lucky in both of my higher education experiences, both at Yale and at Oxford. I've said this before that I kind of like I touched on all these institutions, and at Yale especially was like this. That Yale kind of went crazy right after I left, and I was able to kind of thread my way through and find these wonderful teachers, these wonderful classes. But there are big differences. People don't always understand this. I didn't understand this going in, that the sort of core way of teaching at Oxford and Cambridge is what's called the tutorial system. And it's totally different from the thing where you have, like, you go in with classes, you have seminars, and then maybe lectures, and the lecture breaks into sections, right, and all this stuff that you get in an American university. It's very structured, and it's very sort of evaluation driven, right? You have these, you kind of like take tests, you take midterms, and you get grades and all this stuff. At Oxford, you're matched with a tutor for a subject, you write an essay every week for that person, so you really get a lot of practice reading and writing, and then you talk about the essay in tutorial. And that's basically kind of it. And that you don't get a grade for it. You don't get any grades until like the end of the term. And then at the end of the term, or even sometimes the end of several years, you take these big exams. You sit for hours and you write essays in the exam. And so it really is a training in self-governance, self-guidance. It's very self-directed. Students have to have an incredible drive and initiative so that they don't let all of this just pass, because nobody's checking up on them to make sure that they get evaluated at each stage. And so they have to really be their own best friend here and practice until they get up to this big exam. And the exam is so verbal, right? It's all about language. And this is, you can see students who come out of the British university system are more articulate because they've had more practice learning to use language and reading great writers and great thinkers. Again, there are pluses and minuses. If you didn't know what you wanted to do going in, one of the reasons they're able to do it that way is because the British high school system is so definite. You have to specialize so early on. And so kids come in knowing what they want to take. You apply to a specific degree, not just in general. And then you go and pursue that degree and you kind of know a lot more about it. And so you can be more self-directed. Americans specialize later, and I think that has to do with our emphasis on sort of free choice and freedom. And so, if you are like me, and I am so grateful that I was an undergrad in America, because I thought that I wanted to be an actor. I thought that I wanted to go into theater, and so I double majored in theater and classics, and it took me until my very last year to understand that really what drove me and what made me passionate was old musty books. So I was so lucky that I got to do that, and then I got to have the benefit of this like incredibly free and self-directed English experience. But they both have their benefits and their advantages. They're radically quite different, and it's ultimately I came away with a deep affection for the British system. I think it might have something over or above the American system if you've gone through the British system from the beginning and therefore you've specialized over time. But you have to give up things to do that. You have to not focus on a million different subjects the way we do and just drill down into a few for what's called your A levels. So if anybody's out there thinking about which one to do, I hope that's a helpful kind of guide about different kinds of education. And by the way, you can do tutorial style training here in America. It's just very much more rare. And you can do American style training in England, but there are fewer institutions that do it. All right, that's all the time we have for now. If you didn't get your question answered, don't forget to ask it again next time we have one of these, and I'll get to it, I promise. But I'm so grateful to my VIPs for asking these very smart questions. I hope that it was enlightening for everybody to listen. If you're listening and this was good for you and you'd like more of it, please go to youngheretics.com/locals and become a VIP and join us. It's such a wonderful experience to be connected with you in this way and to know that the cretins at Twitter can't shut us down. Thank you guys so much. I'm seeing you in the comments saying thank you, and the pleasure was all mine. Hope you're well. Talk to you soon.